Don't confuse the bald guys.
Yes, sir. It's all you.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. And most off, thank you very much for having me participate at the MCI drill. That was, I got to say, absolutely incredible, breathtaking, awe-inspiring. You guys have made some of the other drills I've been to with the city of New York look like amateur hour compared to what you guys did. So you should take a lot of credit that it was very well set up. There was a lot of really great effort put into that. There was a lot of items that I wrote down, a lot of positives, a lot of some things that we have room. My dog is trying to jump on my lap, sorry. A lot of positives and a lot of room for things that we could work on. But those are things to bring you up to the level of, you know, a large scale event. For many of you, this is the first, if not the only, hopefully ever in your life. So just an amazing. It's just, I still inspired and awestruck. So let's go with some of the positives. We'll go over some of the room improvements for my notes, and Dr. Meltzer, if you want to jump in and feel free. First thing, as soon as I arrived on campus, I knew very well in advance that there was a drill. I don't know who exactly was the person to drive that, but putting signs up everywhere was such a positive thing. Clearly lets the public know what their expectations are. I believe there was a phone number there to call for emergencies, big yellow signs, big black letters said drill. Those things were great, especially for a college campus with an enclosed population. Moulaging and the environment, the sound, the makeup. I particularly love the one young lady whose job it was to squeeze the capsule on the bag of blood and it would spurt out of her leg. That was cool. I think I sent Max the video of it.
No, I didn't get it yet.
Oh, I'll resend it to you in a little bit then. It was pretty cool. You'd literally walk up and she could squeeze the thing and like look like it was coming out of her femoral vein on her leg. It was really awesome. That adds such a level of realism to your event that your participants are gonna get so much more out of it than just saying, okay, that person's sick and that person's sick and that person's sick. And when you guys organized the outflow of people, there was a very clear sign that this was the green zone, this was the yellow zone, this was the red zone. Now that's something that's actually gonna fall on both sides of my list. So we'll go back to that in just a moment. So just some of the ways that we could have improved things. When we initially set up the incident structure, you guys set up a very, so MCIs are like an art. It's all about how you want to paint the picture. It's definitely not a science, although there's a lot of rigid rules, but you guys set up a very atypical setup. You had the incident commander, you had an operations person, a triage person. I think that was it. Did I miss anything? Triage. There was triage. I don't believe there was transport. Maybe there was.
There was eventually a transport.
Right. What I definitely noticed was that the operations sector, which is, so let's take the scope of a Fidney fire. I like using that. You know, FDNY has a fire. What they do is they have the incident commander shows up is usually a guy with a lot of stars on his neck. He's a big chief from the fire department. He is in charge. And then the next fight becomes, is it the guy from the fire department or the guy from NYPD who's in charge? Because that's always, who wins that fight, Max?
What's that?
I said, who wins the fight of who's in charge? The guy with the hose or the guy with the gun?
I'm not saying.
Okay, fair enough. So the whichever big chief is the incident commander, from there we move into a fire operations and EMS operations and a law enforcement operations. So essentially we had the top of the chain plus EMS operations as another top of the chain. Generally the way we run things is we have an EMS operations, a medical branch operations, and that is the top. So you guys kind of had like a double redundancy at the top there. What I would have done instead was triage, treatment, staging, transport, and And at one point there was actually a communications person. I asked a lot of people, like, what do you do? What's your job? What's your tasks? And people had some interesting answers. Again, not wrong, but interesting. So with that, the incident commander, so if I go to a fire right now, the incident commander is far away, sometimes locked in his truck. He is inaccessible. No one can walk up to him. If you need to talk to the incident commander or the medical branch operations, you're doing so on the radio. He can never leave the command post. He can never walk up to someplace else to find a piece of information. If he can't get that information, he should delegate someone to get that information. And a lot of the times he walked away was questions about transport. Who was being transported where? Who was in that? Where were they going? All things of a transport officer. So with that, the transport officer and the staging officer staging to kind of get an idea of where all the ambulance should park. And then they should park far away, probably by, in this case, probably by the street, and then be directed to the transport officer who will put a patient on the ambulance and then tell them where to go. Just a different way of doing things. And that's generally a little bit better in terms of focusing on that. That operations person should have been the in-charge person, just the redundancy there. Let's see what else I wrote. Yeah, we already went over that. Okay. The initial triage process is, it's kind of like the shotgun effect. So what we did, and one of the things that I think was kind of like a little bit of a red flag for me, was we coordinated the triage process inside the room. So as people approached the room, they came into the room and then spoke to the triage officer. That just becomes a moment of confusion because they actually came into the loudest part of the area to talk about the triage, where to triage, what to do. And basically what should have been done is if you're right outside, you give them a red bag with all the tags in there and tell them to go to work. And then when they're done, they come out, they get another red bag, go back to work. And the triage just has to get done. At one point I did notice that there was like a baby involved. The baby was not triaged while we were already removing people. So we have to move through the process of getting as many people triaged before we start moving people. One of the babies came out and was put immediately on an ambulance with 4 providers. It was 1 patient for 4 providers. In an MCI, that would never fly. If you had something of a large scale event, you should just put the bare minimum necessary to make that transport happen. So it should have been 2 at max. That's it.
That's me.
No, yes, at max. Thank you, Max. Trying to think what else, where we're at. The ICS vest system, I really like that. You guys pulled those out. That was really awesome. The transport one was sitting on the stretcher, never got used. The triage one, I didn't see. Do we have that? Was that missing or something? Do we know?
You put it on about halfway through.
Okay, that's fine.
Triage.
Yeah, that's fine. And the triage person was actually doing a really great, not the triage person, I'm sorry, the treatment person as well didn't have a vest. I don't remember the young lady's name, but she was doing an amazing job of just kind of being the goalie in the triage area, which kind of leads me to the idea of the sectors and where they were, the red, green, and the yellow, and the black for that matter. They were well marked, but they were way too far together, way too close together. What we usually do is we take the green people and we make them walk as far away as they can. And then that's the green sector. I actually asked one of the students to start wandering back into other sectors and sit with other people. And that confused the hell out of people because everyone was so close together. So separating those, one of the things, we had a patient that expired in the red sector and we left him in the red sector expired. So if you can imagine in an MCI, you're going to be sitting with a group of people who are very sick. Someone's going to die, and we just left them there. To me, I think I'm next. You know, there is a bit of a psychology to that. In terms of radio communications, there was a communications officer. That's very rare unless you're dealing with command post stuff. When we have a command post situation, in the command post is someone who's talking to the dispatch center. That is the comms job, the COM-T, COM-L job. From there, that person then talks verbally to the incident commander, all in the command center. We didn't really have a command center structure, like an actual vehicle, so it really wasn't a necessary thing. But I will say that you guys did an amazing job adhering to the identifiers, triage, transport, incident command. You know, no one fell back to, hey, Tom, hey, Bill. No one did that, and that was amazing. That is something that the pros don't do very well at. So outside of your control, but I think it's something, Max, that we should bring up to the leadership. If this was a real event with a lot of other ambulances arriving, the Academy uses an encrypted radio system. We don't have the ability to actually talk to anyone else, nor does anyone else have the ability to talk to us. So what we do have on the national scale is something called NIFOG, N-I-F-O-G, the National Incident Field Operator Guide. And within that are a number of frequencies called TAC frequencies. There's VTAC, UTAC, 7TAC, 8TAC. And they're broken up into law enforcement, medical, and fire. And what we do at Northwell and in New York City is every radio in the arena in the area is mandated to have the UTAC frequencies. What that allows is, that allows every single radio, no matter who you are, and every single one of my ambulances have those frequencies. They can just change zones to an interoperability frequency, and we can all be on the same channel. They're federal standard frequencies. So I'll get Max information if you want to have further talks with the leadership up there. But I think it's worth also then having Vigilant, who's on VHF, which would be another complexity. We have to figure out how to talk between them. And they make devices that you can use the VTACs and the UTACs together, and they connect together. So hospital destinations, we transported a lot of people, which was really awesome. I'm glad you guys actually moved people to another spot. That really gave the realism of not having that resource there for quite some time. The coordination of hospitals and where we're taking people got very complex because we dealt with cardiac, burn, and I believe regular hospital. Cardiac, burn, trauma. Was trauma one of the designators?
Mm-hmm.
So in a real world scenario, when you have 38 people, I think was the number that we ended up treating and transporting, or excusing the greens, we're just taking to a hospital. No one's going for cardiac reasons. Everyone's going for trauma reasons. Everyone's going for burn reasons. So there's not going to be a designator where medical control says, okay, I have this many burns and this many traumas and this many this and this many that. They may have a pediatric center, but in terms of trauma, if you're dealing with, let's say, a 9/11 style event or an active shooter or something like that, everyone's trauma. So you're not going to be able to designate only these people for trauma, only these people for burns. It's not really going to work that way. In terms of the scope of the exercise, that was really great. But what would generally happen in the future is the transport officer is going to go to the treatment officer and say, I have the ability to transport 3 red patients. And she'll pick 3 red patients, and then someone will bring them over to the ambulance. And that decision and that coordination of how many each hospital can accept is being managed at the incident command center. So medical control will tell you, Manhasset can take 17 yellows and 5 reds. You guys did that in the exercise. That was awesome. The next hospital was going to take 5 and 5, so on and so forth. But then that information stays to the IC. The IC tells transport, we have this many ambulances. Let's move people out, and it's just done. And then the only other thing is, it may be worth going over. You know, last summer when I did INDOC in person before the plague came around, we had the ability to take out all these little stuffed dolls and triage and triage and triage and triage. There were quite a few mistriage things in there. I will say you guys properly triaged a lot of blacks, and that's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to walk into someone who is barely viable, who is breathing with no pulse, try to do an intervention, and then say, okay, we're done, and move on to the next person. And that happened quite a few times correctly, and that was amazing. But there was one red tag that came out that was actually in cardiac arrest. So that should have been a black. And, you know, otherwise, I don't know if we ever went over the kids thing. Kids can never be yellows. They're always reds. I believe that was actually, there was one marked red, and I don't know what the second one was marked, but that's all the notes I had. And again, I want to conclude with, you guys did a phenomenal job. I mean, I've been in train simulations at Fidney at Randall's Island that you guys made that one look like a joke. It really, you guys did an incredible job. And for the scope of you guys not running MCIs regularly, you did an amazing job. This would have been a very successful event should something like this actually happen. You would have very successfully managed and transported all those patients. You would have had all the resources you need, and you would have been very successful. So I give you guys a lot of kudos. That was an amazing job. So I am free to have conversation and question as you'd like.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. One failure that we were talking about, me and Sam at least, was the player's brief with the EMTs. What would you suggest we give for the direction of the EMTs doing the drill? Because we didn't give much of any.
Yeah, I remember after right before the helicopter landed, they were talking about feeling underprepared. I don't agree with their sentiment. Listen, they can feel however they feel. I think the reality is in reality, no one's going to say you're walking into this. So I think the fact that there was a lot of vague information is reality. I think you're walking into an unknown. That's the game. The game is you're walking into a room. I mean, if you guys went so far as to black out the room and make it even worse and put flashing lights, and you know, you could have went really crazy, and it was almost Halloween, so you could have went totally nuts. That would have been, that's the reality of it. It's totally unknown. Yeah, so I remember that comment from that day. I disagree with the sentiment. I don't think that they should have been prepared anymore. I think the absolute least amount, the better, and that would have been a successful drill.
To reinforce what Chris just said, in real life, if you're a second unit up and things like that, all you're told is large number of patients, we need other ambulances in most places, because you're not going to have that initial information. It's the first teams coming in and they just say, help, I need more people in many cases. Yeah. So
in fact, like,
less is more.
What's going to happen is you're going to get told to report to a staging area, and a staging officer will be there to receive you, and will either tell you, okay, you're going to be transporting, or I need you to put your ambulance over to the left, and I need you in the triage sector or the treatment sector. And then when you get there, you're going to see the triage officer, the treatment officer, or you're going to see the transport officer with your ambulance, and they're going to be like, okay, well, this is now your job is this. And in terms of the individual player in this, the scope of what they're doing is very, very narrow. You're doing only this task. You're going to take this person, move them right here, and that is exactly what you're going to do in real life. And you guys in the incident command sector are much higher in the incident command structure, are much broader in terms of your scope of what you need to know and do. It's kind of functional versus leadership, that type of thing. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
I saw that nod. Okay.
All right. I'll just mention or ask you about the patients being too close together. You mentioned the tarps. Can you just elucidate more on that, or like how you would have done it?
So, so you guys had red, yellow, and green right next to one another. And like I said, one of the things that I wanted to kind of point out by a point of failure was I asked one of the green students to wander back into the other sectors. I was like, hey, listen, man, I want you to go lay down in the red sector. Like, just go there and just lay down. And I wanted to cause the confusion because they were so close together. And at one point there was someone babysitting the greens, and then that person got pulled away. In reality, that happens. You know, you need that person to do other things. But with that, there's consequences. And the consequences is the greens are going to start wandering. You won't be surprised if the greens start helping treat. You won't be surprised if they just walk away and you'll never see them again or categorize them again. Probably what I would have done in this case is to move the red and the yellow together not together, but in that same peninsula that you guys had both of them on, and moved green further away. One of the things that we can figure out at employers, a simple scenario of tarps. The flags are incredible because the flags are, you go to that green flag and stand there. Usually when we start an incident is, I need everyone who can walk, and who did that first? Who walked in and started screaming at the top of their lungs? Oh my God, perfect. That is exactly what we need. We need someone with a big lung capacity to walk in and say, if you can hear me and you can walk to my voice. That was the first thing he said. That was, I'm going to put him on the truck with me because I don't have that lung capacity. But then from there, what I usually say is, okay, if you can hear me and you're walking towards me, walk to that tree and stand by that tree, or stand by that car, my patrol car. From there, the yellow and the reds can be separated. You can use red and yellow tarps. You can use just tape, like caution tape, and make boxes and corrals, things like that. But the way we had it sectored 1, 2, 3 with nothing really designating where the globs were, just in reality would be a little confusing. Far ahead of any other agencies I've seen. So I'm trying to get you from here to there. But it would be better to use tarps or something to actually make a zone rather than just a flag. The flag was amazing though.
So just to clarify, you were saying that with the, I was holding position of treatment officer. You were saying that for the getting the patients out of the scene into hospitals, that I should be in direct line of communication with the transport officer where they come to me, tell me what they can transport, and then decide, and then transport? Like who goes then?
Yeah, so generally it's going to be the IC and then, or the medical branch officer, or operations officer down to each sector. So you're going to say, I have 15 reds, I have 25 yellows, I have 50 greens. And then the IC is going to tell transport, or transport's going to say, well, staging has 5 ambulances. Staging tells the IC, I have 5 ambulances. The IC tells transport, okay, I need 5 of those reds transported. And then the ambulance comes from the staging area to the transport area. The transport area should be really close to you. And then your staff is going to help get that patient onto the transport, and then off they go. Or even sometimes the transport will have their own staff there as well. Get those 5 patients onto the red, and then off they go. Your job should really, as the treatment officer, was really focused. You did a really good job because I saw you just do a lot of elbowing and getting people away from you. Like, listen, I need, you're trying to control the uncontrollable, which is, you did an awesome job at it. But your job is to just make sure those patients came out categorized, they get treated, and that you spent most of your time in the red sector, which is 100% appropriate, and did a great job at that. But yeah, it's the incident commander will tell transport that they have X number of reds to be transported. Either the transport sector or the treatment sector will then bring those patients to the ambulances, and off they go. Very rarely do sector to sector ever talk to each other. So usually up to the IC and back down.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, no problem.
How do you think our triage tags that we used worked out?
So I know we use the copies, right?
Yeah.
So we use that same system in Suffolk. I don't like it. It has some fancy volunteer-ish type things. It has glow sticks in it. It has, I don't know if you guys have the ones with the glow sticks, but it has glow sticks and you have to fold them 14 times. Mr. Sinnott can tell you in his experience, and I'm sure in my experience, that those fancy things they fall flat in their face. And didn't they that day? I mean, we couldn't find the black tags. I don't know if you made copies of them. People were folding things the wrong way and couldn't figure out how to fold the red side out. Right. I mean, those are the problems of those tags. So, I mean, the tags that we generally use at work, and Mr. Sinnott can reflect, are they're rip-off tags. Yep. So at the top, there's some information, and then there's 5 colors or 4 colors, depending on what jurisdiction you're working in, the national or just New York City. New York City added orange for some reason. So you have a green, a yellow, a red, and a black. And depending on how severe your patient is, the thought is they're not going to get less severe, they're going to get more severe. You rip off a tag and then that's their color. And there's a little note section on the top to put their name, date of birth, things of that sort, so that you can keep it all in one spot. Usually has a rubber band on it or a string, you put it around their neck and you just walk off.
Yep.
Much cheaper too.
No PCRs.
There was a great question that came up that day, and it's worth bringing up, is documenting names. At some point, someone was receiving names of patients and all that information. During an MCI, that stuff's written on a triage tag. The corner of the triage tag, usually in the ones we use, pulls off with a number. And then that number is cataloged as patient 1479 was taken to Manhasset. And then at Manhasset, someone is categorizing the triage tag number 1479 is Jane Smith. So the incident commander's log, or actually the transport log and the hospital receiving log, you can all put that together. But information of demographics, it may be age and sex, that's pretty much it. But otherwise, we're not getting names or history or doing a deep diving into history of present illness. It's get you out of here. It's all about moving and moving things, and yeah. So my recommendation, you know, if you want to spend less money, is to go with the cheaper option. It's so much better. It's so much simpler.
Hey, this is Sarman. I just have a quick question. Did you guys intentionally lose anyone and then try to find that individual?
In terms of hospital tracking?
On campus, hospital, accountability, you know, where's so-and-so?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely tried to have one student, I don't know if it was, the scope of his little card was it said do his own thing. That's what it actually said on his paper. So I, at one point, asked him to walk back into the event. I asked him to walk at other sectors. I asked him to lay down in the red sector. It does bring up a good opportunity to corral those things. But in terms of what Sarman's asking is losing people. I don't think we didn't go that far in the scope of the drill. I don't believe, unless you guys have any other information. And it's a tough thing, I think. So let's take the scenario of an active shooter on campus. I think cataloging and coordinating all the transport of all those people, and especially with our relationship with Manhasset, would be most of them are going to Manhasset. But realistically, that agreement kind of falls out of the window when you have multiple students. So generally what would happen is, like I said, if depending on what tag we go with, there's usually a catalog number. That number gets pulled off, and that tag is responsible with the transport officer. This person went to this hospital, and that's just logged. Then from there, on your PCRs at the hospital, you are filling out PCRs. You'll put the triage number on that tag, and that way you're closing the circle with what patients where. But all that, the what patient where happens at another time, usually later that day or the next day. In terms of figuring out, it's after the event has concluded to catalog all those things. Sarman, were you privy to the New York State thing that they were doing with the barcodes?
No, I've actually never had to deal with mass casualty exercise or any kind of active shooter stuff at the hospital. So
after Sandy, the state of New York created a QR codes, not only of these QR codes, a barcode system, specifically for moving people at nursing homes. It may be something that we can look at to implement, although that's a state thing, so I don't know how that's going to work in terms of the federal. But basically, the transport person would just scan the code, and that code would automatically, there's a state system that's actually viewable by the public. You can look for Sally Smith from this nursing home, and it tells you where they were transported because of the hurricane. I'll get you that information, Simon, so you can look at that.
great. I still say we should do what Disney does. Give every midshipman one of those, RFID little wristband. We'll keep them on campus. Wherever you are, we'll find you. You just have to swallow it when, you know, an emergency happens.
Creepy, but okay.
You have to think ahead of time, you know.
Sure.
Might or might not happen.
Staple gun on the wrist. Chris, thank you for your insight on this. I don't have
Yeah,
very
my
much more to. I don't have much more to add. I kind of told you my points of view right after the event. That the big thing I saw was trying to corral people a little bit better. Otherwise, inside the unit, the only other thing I would come up with is a secondary access and exit point. If you had thought of that, that way you generate a loop of people coming in versus people going out, and you'd be able to control that scene a little bit cleaner, as opposed to the same people coming in the door as coming out the door, if that was accessible. That doesn't always happen in an event.
You're talking about inside the triage area itself, where the actual incident was occurring. Yeah,
Yes.
that is a very good idea. I know we were talking about opening that garage door, and I know we were having difficulty doing so. But
Yeah, there was no the people in engineering didn't leave the key in the door where I asked them to. But there were secondary doors that were accessible that we actually blocked off, and that would have allowed for kind of a circular path. So you can stage people, move them in, and then have them come out the other door, and that way you're not having the bottleneck of people trying to go in and out that same location.
also would have that would have also added to the benefit for the patients not seeing the dead or dying. You can move them out through the green area or through a remote area. That something like that would definitely benefit if it's if it is accessible going forward.
Mm-hmm. And again, the TARP idea of allocating specific space, making it more visible that that's the location where you want your black, red, yellow, etc.
If you wanted to go cheap or inexpensive, I don't want to say cheap. If you want to go inexpensive, just caution tape, get police tape, you know, put it around some poles, make that inside that tape is the red zone. That would work fine. And you can actually end the caution tape on the pole with the flag so it knows that that is the red zone. That's definitely doable.
Do you guys have any interest in having any kind of like a free radical in an unstable environment sort of actor to join the exercise at any point? Ask Dr. Feinstein. He'll be happy to and if he's not free, I'm sure I can just show up and create me.
Hashtag inside joke.
Yeah.
This has got a sign on your chest saying mayhem.
Break anything, man. I tell you.
Perfect.
I know they did a similar active shooter drill at Manhasset a little while ago when 8 Tower was being decommissioned, and they used the patient rooms, and it's interesting there because everyone thinks there's only one way in and out of a floor. There's actually quite a few ways in and out of a floor. So this was after the Bronx shooting. They went in and did an active shooter drill, and it was amazing because the police department was using blanks and they were using explosive sounds, and it was pretty insane. Again, I don't think they matched some of the moulage and stuff that you guys did. I think you guys did an amazing. Getting the theater, it was a theater major. Who was that young lady that was involved?
There was a guy who did theater for like 6+ years.
Yep.
Just insane. That
Kenobi
was
Kinch.
luck on our part that we had that resource.
Priceless. That's amazing. you like I said, you really don't get that in other places. Usually you have a. Was it a student?
Yeah, he was a student. He's a freshman.
He's a freshman. He just about 3 weeks or almost done with his first trimester, and we just barely got him.
Yeah, usually you walk into an event like this, and there's someone sitting on the floor, and they may be wearing some tattered clothing, and then there's a tag on it that says, "I have these injuries." And you guys did such a better job of I mean, the person who has an amputated leg, where you had her hold her leg back and put the leg next to it, I mean, just amazing. You guys did a great job. Max, I'll work on sending you those pictures again. I think I sent you the website, but I'll send you again. And there were some videos in there as well.
It sounds like a plan. I like it.
I think that's all I have for you guys, unless you have any other questions. I don't want to take too much more of your time. I hear it's finals week.
Oh, they don't need no stinking finals.
This falls under work avoidance.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, what was that?
Work
That
avoidance.
this,
Oh, I gave him an excuse to cut out of studying. Super.
Nice.
Glad to help.
Mr. Klein, how did you feel the given versus earned information was taking place during the drill? Was it you?
So, yeah, I think you guys did a really elaborate job with that. And I think you went well above and beyond what you needed to do. You could have done a lot less. I don't think I've ever participated in a drill where you had to earn information. And again, the scope of what you would normally be doing wouldn't be that deep into the process of earning the fact that they take Prilosec for their stomach. Like I don't think we normally wouldn't get to that. So a quick, like I said, most of the times I see it, it's a quick, simple card. It's around a string around their neck. Says my injuries are X. Here's my vital signs. You may put the vital signs on the other side, so they have to get the vital signs, but it's usually not that elaborate.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Okay.
So yeah, so the what was it? The earned and
It was like given and earned, so
given, yeah.
Right
The
away.
given stuff that's when I was looking around and looking at patients and wanting to get an idea of what they were doing. I was just walking up and asking for their given tag, and I was reading that and giving it back to them. That's all I would need to know as a triage person to understand what their triage was, and that was it.
yeah.
But it was definitely an elaborate amount of information and flow with that. That was really, really a great job.
Yeah. I tried to have them act it out as much as they could, but some things they're like, what the heck is paradoxical breathing? And I was like, just start saying paradoxical breathing.
I need you to work out not breathing. Can you do that for me? Can you pretend you're not breathing? Yeah.
Not the other one.
Yeah, no. It's that's hard to do. All right, guys, that's all I have. I really appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to participate and take a look at this. I was, like I said, I was awestruck, and I thought it was a great job. So anytime you need me, and if Nassau County doesn't want to participate next year, I heard there's another helicopter that was interested in doing some drill work if we need. Just ask Mr. Sun, obviously.
We can get that done.
Yeah, smaller helicopter, but just as blue.
It works.
Right, guys, if you don't have any more questions, I'll let you get back to studying and doing all the important work you're supposed to be doing. And
thank you very much for your insight.
For your time and all your comments.
yeah, glad to help.
Well,
Thank you, Christopher.
we drill annually or try and do it every trimester if we can.
Yeah, something of that scope is a once a year thing, but I definitely next year when it comes around, let me know. I'd love to be a part of it again. That was
Absolutely.
incredible.
Whoever's in charge, we'll make sure you're on the list.
Sure thing.
Sounds like a plan. I like it. Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right.
Take care.